Hello everyone and welcome back to the Galtor Campaign, part 3 here as we pick up with the chapter Isolation of the first phase of the battle for Galtor. And it continues from the point of view of Margrave Sheridan Douglas, the leader of the 12th Vegan Rangers, who at this point was hovering in orbit above the planet waiting for their opportunity to drop down, and has since made landfall and now begins their counterattack. Isolation. Our counterattack on Wuhan Pass roared down on the Kuritan position like a tornado. We struck hard, pressed home, but still failed to dislodge them. The confined space favoured the Kuritan defenders, who fell back from one excellent firing position to another, escaping any flanking manoeuvre. Nevertheless, our mission was accomplished. By blocking one end of the pass, we kept Kuritan from using it as a jump-off point for an attack on New Wuhan City. My command concentrated around the Star League storehouse and the mountain passes. McCullough's battalion reached the Middleway Pass just in time to join the battered remains of the 33rd Avalon Hussars. Constantly harassed by Combine air squadrons, the Hussars had crossed 6,000 miles of featureless plain. Operating from the orbiting dropships, our own air lancers defended them. Supply shortages, especially of bombs and SRM loads, hampered effective Davian air cover and continued to plague us throughout the remainder of the campaign. The Kuritan reinforcements dropped astride the main road to New Derry, cutting off the last supply route into the city. Trapped inside were the Daha DMM RBG, General Liao Yao Xiang's brigade, the Lone Wolves mercenary force, and a large number of civilians. At first, the city exploded into chaos. Kuritan Shologar fighters attacked military and civilian targets with impunity. Rumours would start to spread that the Draconis Combine would use a lethal nerve gas to kill civilians. Gas masks started selling for thousands of C-bills. Panicked citizens jammed the transport and communication systems, and through all of the confusion, the Lone Wolves roamed the streets in their battle mechs, looting at will. Order was finally restored when Sir William Dobson, commander of the Daha DMM, challenged the looters like an old-time Western marshal, his bright orange Warhammer disabling 2 renegade mechs with particle cannon shots. Kuritan had problems of his own though. The Combine advance stopped while the 2 district commanders met on the windswept Wagnall Plain. Choked with indignation, Samsonov demanded that his men be put to better use than besieging a city full of cutthroats and old women. Yoriyoshi would match the Galadon warlords in dignity and wanted to know why 3 Galadon regular regiments landed on the planet while only 2 Benjamin regulars were present. Eventually, both sides agreed on a plan. The 21st Galadon Regulars Regiment would rotate off-world, and the 11th Benjamin Regulars would drop during the next assault. In the meantime, the 3rd and 17th Benjamin Regulars would clear the Wuhan Pass in preparation for an assault on New Wuhan City. The Galadon Regular forces would crush the resistance in New Derry, then cross the Wagnall Plain and assault the fortifications around Middleway Pass. The Benjamin Regulars would wait until the Galadon forces smashed through the pass before attacking New Wuhan City. The city would then fall to a joint attack. Amazingly, neither man would mention the Star League storehouse. Both sides seemed more concerned with prestige than winning the battle. Yoriyoshi and Samsonov's lack of enthusiasm for finding the storehouse supports the theory that the Kuritan commanders never expected the depot to be real. The Galtor campaign interested them only as a means to advance their careers. While the warlords dickered about their precious reputations, Lyon's battalion, a strong veteran force of heavy and medium battle mechs, reinforced the 33rd Avalon Hussars. Colonel Lyon took over command of the 33rd Hussars. Besides some small blockade runners, these troops were the last Federated Sun reinforcements to arrive on Galtor 3 for near 3 months. The major reason for the lack of support centred on the curious behaviour of Prince Hansa Davian. After developing, creating, arranging and implementing the Galtor plan, he seemed to lose interest. Of course, major events on the border with House Lao had diverted his attention, but never before or since had Prince Davian been so indecisive. Prince Davian's seeming lack of interest paralysed his district commanders, who watched the battles on Galtor 3 and Marduk with growing alarm. District Commander Andrew Cunningham, at Robinson, placed the Robinson Draconis March Militia on full alert, then contacted Davian for instruction. When no instruction would come, Cunningham decided to move anyway. Cunningham diverted Meade's battalion of the 33rd Avalon Hussars, still in transit, to lead the assault on Marduk. Supporting the attack were elements from the Raman Draconis March militia. As soon as Colonel Meade secured Marduk, the Bremen and Raman DMMs would then reinforce Galtor 3, followed by the Clovis DMM and the Robinson DMM. The plan dangerously weakened the centre point of the Draconis March border, and without Hans Davian's approval, no mercenary or house regiment could be used to strengthen the sector. The plan was sound, but Cunningham dragged his feet. He allowed the Raman DMM 3 extra weeks to refit its air lancers. In addition, the Robinson DMM experienced delays in refueling and equipment. The battle for New Derry. The Draconis Combine didn't wait for our reinforcements. Prodded by Takashi Kurita, their regiments lumbered into action. Their first objective, New Derry. The Galtorians had built New Derry on a marshy area near the mouth of 3 large rivers, the Dublin, Ruther, and Shijiang. The city spread along the riverbanks and coastline, and its airport, constructed on landfill, extended into the harbour. Because of the marshes, rivers, and forests that surround New Derry, an attacker has only 2 clear approaches to the city. One lay along the Ruther River valley from the north. The second would come from a narrow stretch of firm ground between Wild Forest and Mendoza Hollows, a vast marsh that extends east for hundreds of miles. I didn't envy Sir Dobson's task of defending the capital. The defence depended on a ragtag collection of under-equipped, poorly disciplined troops, sprinkled with a few veterans from his own unit. They faced 2 line regiments, led by competent commanders. Nevertheless, Sir Dobson knew how to control the battle, and bring it to his advantage. Dobson didn't try to bar the Galadon regiment's advance into New Derry, believing that his forces would be much more effective fighting in the confined spaces of the city. He divided the Lone Wolves into hunter-killer groups of 1 or 2 lancers, and positioned them in factories in the north side of town. Like lions, they waited to strike at the flank and rear of Kurita penetrations. A group of the Lone Wolves' best city defence mechs and 5 12 Vegan Rangers volunteers manning urban mechs concentrated in Dublin Town Square, a large central transport hub, as a reserve area. To the south, the forces of General Lao Yaoxiang dug in around the river bridges. General Lao and Sir Dobson had spent 2 days personally positioning every gun and soldier. Throughout the city, Dobson created fallback positions. Central Command was set up in Elliott Park, along with the Leopard-class dropship Marion Davies, and a single battery of antiquated but still serviceable heavy artillery. The police and firemen were armed with flamers, Inferno SRMs, and conventional satchel charges. Other civilians left the city, many fleeing into the Wild Forest and Mendoza Hollow. As expected, the 5th Galadon regulars attacked first from the north, supported by 3 dozen fighters. The mechs would plough into the city in 5 separate columns. The Lone Wolves instantly stopped 3 of them, with concentrated fire on their flanks. The last 2 columns broke through. The first column entered a working-class neighbourhood held by the police and firefighting unit. When the first Kurita mech, a Jenner, stepped on an oil streak mixed with soap flakes, the firefighters blasted a concentrated stream of water into the mech's head at point-blank range. The mech fell over like a rotted cactus. The next Jenner, coming up too close behind, tripped over the first and landed in an electrical substation. There was a blinding flash and an explosion as the police closed in and finished both mechs off. The conflagration spread up and down the street, forcing the rest of the Draconis Combine column to retreat. The second column followed the river into the heart of the city. It reached the Elliott Park HQ undetected and proceeded to rip out the heart of the defence. 1 minute of concentrated missile and laser fire created hours of panic and confusion. Coolant trucks exploded, killing scores of techs and administrators. Missiles hit from a dozen mechs reduced Dobson's mobile HQ to a twisted, burning hulk. Kurita lasers incinerated the trees and smoke soon filled the park. Then the ammunition dump exploded with a stunning crash, a white-hot flash of flame scorching the park, killing every unprotected soul. Sir Dobson counterattacked using the few mechs in his regimental line group that he had. Meanwhile, the Lone Wolves Reserve, advancing toward the south of combat, struck the Kurita positions in the rear. The urban mechs proved themselves invaluable in the fight, and the Combine mechs, confused by the smoke and carnage, cautiously withdrew to the north. In their wake, the Kurita mechs had damaged the dropship and destroyed the artillery battery, almost all repair facilities, and most of the communication systems were damaged. For quite a while, I thought the abrupt silence meant that the Combine had won, but 3 hours later, Sir Dobson broadcast a defiant message over a civilian aviation frequency. "We are still alive," he reported, "and we are still killing Kurita." The 8th Galladon regulars would attack at dawn the next day, leaping over the first line of defences and striking deep into the city. The infantry and motorised troops of General Lau's brigade crumbled before the Panther, Jenner and Valkyrie mechs on the light battalions. The Combine veterans cleared Yao Xiang's brigade from the riverline and rolled it back into the city. Desperate for any sort of block, Sir Dobson ordered every other Lone Wolf Lance to assemble in Elliott Park. His own regimental battle group, battered from the previous day's fighting, attacked the deepest Kurita thrust. For 3 hours, Sir Dobson and his Warhammer fought wherever the fighting was thickest, rallying his men and the remaining troops of General Lau's brigade. Lone Wolf Tech Harold Anderson described Dobson's condition when he returned to Elliott Park. Throughout the day, Sir Dobson would turn up at the park and leave with any Lone Wolf mechs that bothered to obey his orders, and as sure as I'm standing here, each time he came back, his Warhammer displayed a new dent or streak of laser burn. Eventually, his Holly SRM took a hit, and the wreckage dangled behind him like a dead bird. It was a pitiful sight. The last time Sir Dobson returned, the right arm of his Warhammer had disappeared, and the leg actuators sparked every time he moved. He would have gone out again if his Martel laser hadn't overheated and fused his central servo links. Even when the 8th Galladon made its final assault, he stayed with his machine, firing his PPC and looking like a proper sitting duck. He's a brave man, I don't mind telling you that. Kurita losses increased after the Lone Wolves entered the fray. The Combine Lancers became separated in the maze of city streets and found it dangerous to stop anywhere too long. A stopped mech attracted the roving bands of police and infantry who risked their lives to get off a single SRM shot. Fearing even larger losses at night, the battalion commanders withdrew to the riverline at dusk. The fall of New Wuhan City. Not for one moment did General Yoriyoshi plan to wait for General Samsonov's mechs to breach Middleway Pass. Almost simultaneously with the attack on New Derry, every available Draconis Combine dropship assembled on the Wagnall Plain to embark the 17th Benjamin Regulars. Nagochido's 3rd Benjamin Regulars concentrated on the eastern side of Wuhan Pass to pin down our troops there and wait for the signal to attack. Yoriyoshi and Nagochido conceived a bold plan to take the Wuhan Pass and New Wuhan City in a single stroke. The 17th and 11th Benjamin Regulars planned to drop in the level fields on the western side of the mountain pass. Meanwhile, the 3rd would charge our positions in Wuhan Pass. The 2 Benjamin regiments west of the mountains could trap our troops in Wuhan and then take the city. It was a dangerous plan for the Benjamin Regulars. Our air lancers hadn't conceded the upper atmosphere to the Draconis Combine and would challenge such a large collection of dropships. The Combine's daring was commendable, even though it would prove costly. Meanwhile, our presence in Wuhan Pass continued to grow. Sumner's battalion of the Dahar DMM and Johnston's battalion of the 12th Vegan Rangers dug themselves into strong positions among the hills and hollows of the pass. The remaining fighters of the 33rd Avalon Hussars and the Dahar DMM supported them from an airbase in New Wuhan City. The battered remnants of the 33rd Avalon Hussars protected New Wuhan City. Normally, a regiment so depleted would be rotated off-world, but we needed every mech and mech warrior. The 33rd had to stay. Benham's battalion was at 60% strength, Wyon's battalion was at 95% strength, and the regimental battle group was at 35% strength. The 3rd Battalion, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Meade, orbited the planet Marduk, preparing to spearhead the assault on the Kurita defenders there and open our supply line. I needed a reserve force, and so 1 battalion of the 12th Vegan Rangers went into orbit. All the 12th Air Lancers left to defend the orbiting dropships, giving Kurita air superiority on the ground. That was my mistake. I missed those fighters sorely in the coming confrontation. Finally, stretched across the narrow Middleway Pass, a few native units dug in. This area was the least of my worries. Even a small force could pin a regiment down long enough for the Vegan Rangers to reinforce. An hour after the 8th Galladon Regulars assault battalions withdrew from New Derry, our scanners picked up the first Kurita dropships entering the atmosphere above New Wuhan. Our fighters scrambled to meet them, and a vicious dogfight erupted. Once we broke through their screen of fighters and attacked the dropships, the Union-class dropship Einstein exploded, killing a company from the 11th Benjamin's Hogarth Battalion. Other dropships carried out their missions faithfully, blasting our fighters left and right. Though outnumbered 2 to 1, Colonel Lyon decided to attack the moment that the 11th Benjamin hit the dirt. At first, his attack succeeded, and scattered Kuritan mechs had little chance to group. Gradually, however, resistance would stiffen. Sensing the shift, Lyon retreated back to the city. His attack had thrown the 11th Benjamin off balance, and gained time for his techs to remove supplies from New Wuhan City. Not stopping at New Wuhan City though, Lyon kept retreating toward the Star Lake storehouse. As he retreated, the Combine attacked Wuhan Pass. The Draconians advanced in a classic 3-wave attack, putting relentless pressure on the defenders. Painstakingly, they would identify one of our fire positions, flank it, isolate it, then force it to retreat or be destroyed. Combine air power stopped any counterattacks that we could muster. By late afternoon, the air in the pass shimmered brightly with each new explosion. Lieutenant Colonel Johnston's command ran short of all types of ammunition, his men exhausted, and his mechs overheated. Without relief, they had to abandon their position. Once again, Yoriyoshi waited for the correct moment to play his trump card. The 17th Benjamin dropped 1 battalion along the supply road to Wuhan Pass and 2 battalions between the 33rd Avalon Hussars and the Star Lake storehouse. Control under pressure. In response, my staff devised a daring rescue. 3 dropships would land directly south of Wuhan Pass in a small area of level terrain to pick up the remainder of Johnston's and Sumner's battalions. Meanwhile, 2 battalions of the 12th Vegan Rangers would strike from the north at the 17th Benjamin battalions blocking the 33rd Avalon Hussars, while the Hussars struck from the south. The 17th Benjamin battalions would be destroyed in a classic battle of envelopment. Any mission that depends on dropships landing exactly within a confined area leans a bit hard on luck. Our dropship pilots had never before attempted such delicate manoeuvrings at dusk. Nevertheless, they landed without mishap. Then, just as our 2 battalions began to move out, the 3rd Benjamin routed. Our forces in Wuhan Pass came screaming out of the pass with the Draconians not far behind. A running battle developed between the 2 forces, which the faster Kuritan mechs would begin to win. Our mechs would have been overrun had not the added power of our dropship's weaponry opening fire at the enemy mechs at the last moment, stopping them. Standing like a beacon amid the noise, smoke and confusion, Colonel Johnston blasted away with the Pontiac 100 autocannon on his Victor battle mech, which was the last Davian mech to leave the field. The tiger-striped mech took so many hits that the entire leg and jump jet system fell apart when the dropship jerked into the atmosphere. Blazing away at the mechs below, the dropships lifted off with 65% of the Davian force intact. Colonel Johnston was the only surviving officer. Davian mechs lay strewn from Wuhan Pass to the dropship landing site. South of New Wuhan City, Colonel Lyon's command stumbled deeper and deeper into trouble. For 6 hours, the brutal pace had strained his men and machines to the breaking point. The pitch-black night didn't help matters. Units strayed or became lost under strict radio silence. Lyon couldn't contact a quarter of his mechs. The Alpha Regiment of the 12th Vegan Rangers loved the darkness, however. Assault Lancers came within 1,000 meters of Combine pickets before being challenged. Their answer, of course, shattered the unsuspecting mechs and lit the blackness in a surreal display of red, green, and yellow xenon and laser. The darkness fragmented the battle into dozens of individual firefights flowing back and forth over the same hills. Flames engulfed a nearby forest, inhibiting targeting acquisition by infrared scanners. The 33rd Hussars could hear the guns, and slowly Colonel Lyon moved his command toward them. 2 hours after the attack, the first mechs of the 33rd Avalon Hussars met the attacking Rangers. In the darkness, the 17th Benjamin escaped, air lancers operating from the captured base at New Wuhan City, covering their withdrawal gallantly.